The stable boy began to tremble. Why did the twin cowboys step in together? The lantern swung overhead, casting wild shadows across the stable walls as Finn's hands shook so violently he could barely grip the bridle. He'd been working at the Double Creek Ranch for 3 months, and in all that time, he'd never seen the Hartley twins look at him the way they were looking at him now, standing shoulder to shoulder in the doorway, blocking his only exit, their expressions unreadable in the dim light. "You think you can just leave?" Caleb's voice was low, almost a whisper, but it cut through the silence like a blade. His twin brother, Carter, remained silent, jaw clenched, blue eyes fixed on Finn with an intensity that made the younger man's breath catch in his throat. Finn's back pressed against the wooden stall, his heart hammering so hard he was certain they could hear it. He'd made a mistake, a terrible, unforgivable mistake, and now there was nowhere to run. The twins took a step forward in perfect unison, and Finn's world tilted on its axis. "I didn't mean," Finn started, his voice breaking. "I wasn't trying to." "Stop," Carter said, his deep voice vibrating through the confined space. "Just stop running from us." And that's when Finn realized this wasn't about what he'd done wrong at all. This was about something else entirely. Something that had been building between the three of them for weeks, simmering beneath every shared glance, every accidental touch, every moment of prolonged silence. The twins stepped closer, and Finn's entire body began to tremble for reasons he couldn't, or wouldn't, name. 3 months earlier, Finn had arrived at the Double Creek Ranch with nothing but a worn duffel bag and a letter of recommendation from a man who barely knew him. At 21 years old, he was running from a life that had never quite fit, searching for something he couldn't articulate. The ranch sat in a valley between rolling Montana hills, sprawling and wild, the kind of place where a person could disappear into the work and forget who they used to be. The Hartley twins had hired him without much ceremony. Caleb had done most of the talking, his easy smile and quick laugh making Finn feel almost welcome. Carter had stood back, arms crossed, studying Finn with those piercing blue eyes that seemed to see straight through every wall Finn had carefully constructed. They were identical in features, the same strong jawline, the same sun-bronzed skin, the same dark hair that curled slightly at the edges, but their personalities couldn't have been more different. Caleb was fire, all warmth and spontaneity, quick to joke and quicker to forgive. Carter was ice, measured and thoughtful, his silences more eloquent than most people's conversations. Together, they ran the ranch with a precision that spoke of years of unspoken communication, finishing each other's sentences, anticipating each other's needs. Finn found himself fascinated by their dynamic, drawn to it in ways that made him uncomfortable. His first week had been grueling. The work was physical, demanding, and relentless. Finn mucked stalls until his shoulders burned, mended fences under the brutal sun, learned to handle horses that outweighed him by 1,000 pounds. He collapsed into his bunk each night too exhausted to think, which was exactly what he wanted. But as the days passed and his body adapted to the rhythm of ranch life, he found his mind wandering to places he tried to keep locked away. The twins had a way of being present without being intrusive. Caleb would appear at his elbow with an extra bottle of water, a joke ready to lighten the mood. Carter would silently demonstrate a technique Finn was struggling with, his large hands gentle and sure, never making Finn feel inadequate. They worked alongside him, never above him, and Finn felt something dangerous beginning to bloom in his chest: belonging. One evening, after a particularly long day, Caleb invited Finn to join them for dinner at the main house. Finn had been eating alone in the bunkhouse, grateful for the solitude, but something in Caleb's easy smile made it impossible to refuse. The house was warm and lived in, filled with photographs and memories, the kind of home Finn had never known. Carter was already in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, preparing a meal with the same quiet competence he brought to everything. They ate together at a worn wooden table, and Finn listened as the twins bantered back and forth, their affection for each other evident in every teasing jab, every knowing glance. For the first time in years, Finn felt the tight knot in his chest begin to loosen. He laughed at Caleb's stories, met Carter's rare smiles with ones of his own, and for a few hours he allowed himself to imagine this could be real, this warmth, this acceptance, this sense of home. But later that night, lying in his bunk, Finn felt panic creep in. He'd promised himself he wouldn't do this again, wouldn't get attached, wouldn't let himself want things that could never be his. The twins were kind to everyone, it didn't mean anything. And even if it did, Finn had no right to hope for more. He was just the stable boy, temporary help, someone passing through. He couldn't afford to forget that. The shift happened so gradually that Finn didn't notice it at first. It started with small things. Caleb finding reasons to work alongside him more often. Carter's hand lingering on his shoulder when he passed by. The way both of them seemed to watch him when they thought he wasn't looking. Finn told himself he was imagining it, that his own confused feelings were coloring his perception of innocent gestures. But then came the day everything changed. Finn was in the south pasture trying to calm a spooked mare who'd gotten tangled in old barbed wire. The horse was panicking, thrashing against the fence, blood streaming from cuts on her legs. Finn talked to her in low, soothing tones, his hand steady despite his racing heart. He'd almost gotten her free when her hoof caught him in the ribs, sending him sprawling backward into the dirt, the air knocked from his lungs. He heard shouting, boots pounding across the field, and then Caleb was there, dropping to his knees beside Finn, hands frantically checking for injuries. "Don't move, Carter, get the—" "I'm fine," Finn gasped, struggling to sit up, but Caleb's hands on his shoulders kept him down. "You're not fine, you're bleeding." Caleb's voice was shaking, his eyes wide with something that looked like fear. Carter arrived seconds later, his face pale beneath his tan, and together they helped Finn to his feet with a tenderness that made Finn's throat tight. They brought him to the main house, ignoring his protests, and Carter retrieved the first aid kit while Caleb helped Finn out of his torn shirt. Finn sat on the kitchen chair, acutely aware of their proximity, of Caleb's gentle fingers on his skin as he cleaned the cuts, of Carter's intense focus as he checked Finn's ribs for fractures. The air felt thick, charged with something Finn couldn't name. "You could have been killed," Carter said quietly, his hand resting on Finn's bare shoulder, thumb unconsciously tracing small circles on his skin. "You should have waited for us." "I couldn't just leave her suffering," Finn replied, his voice barely above a whisper. He looked up to find both twins staring at him with identical expressions, something between admiration and exasperation, layered with something deeper that made Finn's pulse spike. Caleb's hand stilled on Finn's ribs, his fingers warm against Finn's skin. "You're too brave for your own good, you know that." The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. Finn's breath came shallow, and he couldn't tell if it was from the pain or from the way Caleb was looking at him, the way Carter's hand hadn't moved from his shoulder. He should pull away, should break whatever this was before it went too far, but he couldn't make himself move. Carter cleared his throat, stepping back first, and the spell broke. "You're staying in the house tonight. We need to monitor you for concussion." Finn wanted to argue, but the truth was, his whole body ached, and the thought of walking back to the bunkhouse felt impossible. So he nodded, and the twins set him up in their guest room, bringing him food and water, checking on him every hour through the night. Each time one of them appeared in the doorway, silhouetted by the hallway light, Finn's heart would skip, and he'd pretend to be sleeping, watching through lowered lashes as they stood there, just watching him in return. Something had changed that day. Some invisible line had been crossed, and Finn knew, with a certainty that terrified him, that nothing would ever be the same again. The days after the accident felt different. Caleb and Carter became more protective, more present. And Finn found himself constantly aware of them in ways that made simple tasks feel impossible. Every casual touch, a hand on his back, a shoulder brushing against his, sent electricity through his system. Every shared glance across the dinner table made his breath catch. He was spiraling, falling into something he had no business feeling, and he had no idea how to stop it. Worse, he was beginning to suspect he wasn't the only one affected. He noticed the way Caleb's smile lingered a little too long when their eyes met, the way Carter's gaze would follow him across the barn, intense and searching. He noticed how they always seemed to position themselves near him, creating a triangle of proximity that felt both comforting and suffocating. And he noticed the glances they exchanged with each other, silent conversations happening above his head, discussions he wasn't privy to but felt in his bones. One evening, as they sat on the porch after dinner, Caleb brought out a guitar and started playing. The melody was sweet and melancholic, drifting across the darkening fields. Carter sat in comfortable silence, nursing a beer, his eyes on the horizon. Finn sat between them, close enough to feel the heat of their bodies, and felt something inside him crack open. "You play?" Caleb asked, pausing mid-song, offering the guitar to Finn. Finn shook his head. "Never learned." "I could teach you," Caleb offered, his smile soft in the gathering dusk. "If you want." "Caleb teaches everyone," Carter added, his deep voice warm with affection. "He taught me, and I have zero musical talent." "That's not true," Caleb protested, nudging his twin's shoulder. "You just need practice." Watching them like this, so comfortable in their shared history, Finn felt a sharp pang of longing. Not just for one of them, but for both, for this easy intimacy, this belonging, this home they'd built together. It was wrong, confusing, impossible, but the feeling persisted, growing stronger with each passing day. "Maybe sometime," Finn said quietly, standing abruptly. "I should get some rest, early start tomorrow." He fled before either could respond, his heart pounding, shame and want warring inside him. Back in the bunkhouse, he lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand what was happening to him. He'd known he was attracted to men since he was 15, had even had a brief relationship in college before everything fell apart. But this was different. This wasn't just attraction. This was something deeper, more complex, and it involved two people who were inseparable. The thought of wanting both of them felt greedy, impossible, like some fantasy that could never exist in the real world. And yet, he couldn't stop himself from imagining it. What it would be like to be held between them, to be the third point in their triangle, to belong to them the way they belonged to each other. He buried his face in his pillow, trying to smother the thoughts, the longing, the hope that was more dangerous than anything he'd ever felt. The ranch hosted a small gathering for a neighboring farm's anniversary, and Finn found himself pulled into the celebration despite his protests. The twins insisted, with Caleb physically dragging him toward the main house where music spilled into the night and laughter echoed across the property. Finn felt out of place among the ranchers and their families, but the twins never left his side, including him in conversations, introducing him as if he were family rather than just hired help. As the night wore on and the crowd thinned, someone suggested dancing. An old country song crackled through the speakers, and Finn watched as couples paired off, swaying in the warm night air. Caleb appeared at his elbow, slightly drunk, his smile more unguarded than Finn had ever seen it. "Dance with me," Caleb said, extending his hand. Finn's heart stopped. "I don't know how." "I'll teach you. Come on." Caleb's fingers wrapped around Finn's wrist, gentle but insistent, pulling him toward the makeshift dance floor. Finn glanced around nervously, but no one seemed to care, too lost in their own moments to notice two men swaying together. Caleb placed Finn's hand on his shoulder, his own hand settling on Finn's waist, and they moved slowly, awkwardly at first. Finn was hyper-aware of every point of contact, of Caleb's breath on his cheek, of the way Caleb's thumb traced small patterns against his hip. This close, he could see the flecks of gold in Caleb's blue eyes, could feel the steady beat of his heart. "You're a natural," Caleb murmured, his voice low and warm. "You're a liar," Finn replied. But he was smiling, letting himself enjoy this moment even as his mind screamed warnings. The song changed to something slower, more intimate, and Finn felt Caleb pull him closer, eliminating the careful space between them. His breath hitched, and he looked up to find Caleb staring at him with an expression that made his knees weak. There was want there, clear and undeniable, and something that looked like hope. "Finn," Caleb started, his voice rough with emotion. "May I cut in?" Carter's deep voice shattered the moment. Finn jerked back, his face burning, but Carter was already there, his hand extended. Caleb hesitated, something passing between the twins, a silent communication Finn couldn't interpret, before he stepped aside with a small nod. Carter took Finn's hand with a gentleness that belied his size, pulling Finn close with an ease that suggested this wasn't strange, wasn't wrong. They moved together, and Finn realized Carter was a better dancer than Caleb, his movements sure and practiced. But what undid Finn completely was the way Carter looked at him, with the same intensity he brought to everything, but now layered with something tender, something that looked dangerously like affection. "You okay?" Carter asked quietly, his hand warm and solid against the small of Finn's back. Finn nodded, not trusting his voice. He could feel Caleb watching them from the edge of the floor, could sense the weight of his gaze. The three of them existed in this strange triangle of awareness, each acutely conscious of the others, and Finn felt like he was drowning in it. "We need to talk," Carter said, his thumb brushing against Finn's spine in a way that couldn't be accidental. "Soon, the three of us." Before Finn could respond, the song ended and the moment evaporated. Carter stepped back, his expression unreadable once more, and Finn stood there feeling exposed and confused and terrified. He mumbled something about being tired and fled into the night, ignoring Caleb's calls, needing space to breathe, to think, to figure out what the hell was happening. He didn't return to the bunkhouse. Instead, he walked to the stables, seeking comfort in the familiar smell of hay and horses. He found a corner in the empty tack room and sank down, his head in his hands, trying to steady his racing thoughts. What did Carter mean by "we need to talk"? What were they thinking? What did they want from him? And more terrifying still, what did he want from them? Finn spent the next 3 days avoiding the twins as much as possible. He rose before dawn to start work in the far pastures, ate lunch alone in the fields, and returned to the bunkhouse after dark. It was cowardly and he knew it, but the alternative, facing whatever Carter had meant by that conversation they needed to have, felt impossible. But the twins weren't making it easy. They found him anyway, showing up wherever he was working with flimsy excuses. Caleb brought him lunch, sitting beside him in companionable silence even when Finn wouldn't meet his eyes. Carter appeared to help with tasks that didn't need two people, his presence steady and patient, never pushing but never leaving either. On the third day, Finn's resolve cracked. He was in the barn grooming one of the horses when both twins appeared in the doorway, blocking the light. His heart sank. There was nowhere to run this time. "Finn," Caleb started, his usual easy manner replaced with something more serious. "We can't keep doing this. This avoidance thing, it's not fair to any of us." "I'm not avoiding," Finn began, but Carter cut him off. "Yes, you are, and we know why." Carter stepped closer, his eyes searching Finn's face. "But you need to understand something. You're not alone in this. Whatever you're feeling, whatever's got you running scared, we're feeling it too." Finn's hand stilled on the horse's mane, his heart hammering against his ribs. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do," Caleb said softly, moving to Finn's other side, creating that triangular proximity that always made Finn's breath catch. "We've all been dancing around this for weeks, pretending like there's nothing happening between us. But there is, Finn. You know there is." Finn's throat went dry. "This is crazy. You're brothers. I'm nobody. This doesn't make sense." "That doesn't it?" Carter's hand came to rest on Finn's shoulder, warm and grounding. "Because it makes perfect sense to us. Has from the moment you arrived. We're not asking for anything you're not ready to give," Caleb added, his voice gentle. "We just need you to stop running, to at least talk to us about what's happening here." Finn looked between them, these two men who had somehow worked their way under his skin, into his heart, in ways he'd never experienced before. The rational part of his brain screamed that this was impossible, wrong, too complicated to ever work. But the rest of him, the part that had been lonely for so long, that had been searching for something he couldn't name, that part wanted to lean into them, to see where it could lead. "I'm scared," Finn whispered, the admission tearing from somewhere deep inside. "I'm scared of wanting this, of wanting you both. It doesn't make sense. People don't, this isn't how things work." "Says who?" Caleb's hand found Finn's, fingers interlacing. "Why does love have to fit into some predetermined box? Why can't it be something different, something more?" "Love," Finn's voice cracked on the word. Carter's hand slid from his shoulder to cup his jaw, tilting Finn's face up to meet his eyes. "What else would you call this? This thing between the three of us that feels like gravity, like coming home, like everything we've been missing without knowing it." Finn's eyes burned with unshed tears. He'd spent so long believing he was broken that his inability to fit into normal relationship dynamics meant he was wrong somehow. But hearing them say it, hearing them name this thing that had been building between them, made something inside him crack wide open. "I don't know how this works," Finn said, his voice shaking. I don't even know what this would look like." "Neither do we," Caleb admitted, squeezing Finn's hand. "But we want to figure it out together, if you're willing." Finn looked at their faces, Caleb's open and hopeful, Carter's intense and sure, and felt the last of his resistance crumble. He nodded, unable to speak past the emotion clogging his throat, and felt both of them move closer, surrounding him with warmth and presence and the promise of something new. Carter leaned his forehead against Finn's, his breath warm on Finn's face. "We're going to take this slow. No pressure, no expectations, just honesty and time to figure out what we all need." "Okay," Finn breathed, and when Caleb's arms came around both of them, pulling them into an embrace that felt like safety and possibility, Finn finally let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, this impossible thing could be real. The days that followed were unlike anything Finn had ever experienced. The three of them moved through the ranch work with a new awareness, stolen glances becoming longer, accidental touches becoming intentional. There was an unspoken agreement to keep things private from the ranch hands and visitors, but when they were alone, the walls came down. Evenings became sacred. They'd gather on the porch or in the living room, talking late into the night about everything, their pasts, their fears, their hopes. Finn learned that Caleb had always known he was attracted to men, had come out to their family years ago with Carter's unwavering support. Carter had taken longer to understand his own sexuality, had only recently acknowledged that gender mattered less to him than the person. "When you arrived," Carter admitted one night, his hand absently playing with Finn's hair as Finn sat on the floor between Carter's knees, "something just clicked. For both of us." "It was like you completed something we didn't know was incomplete," Caleb added from where he sat beside Finn, his shoulder pressed against Finn's. "Individually, Carter and I are whole people, but the three of us together, it just feels right. Balanced." Finn understood what they meant. The dynamic between them was unlike anything he'd imagined. Caleb's energy balanced Carter's calm. Carter's steadiness grounded Caleb's spontaneity, and Finn found himself fitting into the spaces between them, creating a triangle where each point supported the others. Physical affection came gradually, respectfully. A hand held here, an arm around shoulders there. Caleb was more demonstrative, always reaching for Finn, pulling him into hugs that lasted a beat too long. Carter was more subtle, a hand on the small of Finn's back, fingers brushing against his as they passed tools, his presence always close and grounding. One afternoon, working together to repair a section of fence, Caleb wiped sweat from his forehead and grinned at Finn. "You've got something right here," he said, reaching over to brush a smudge of dirt from Finn's cheek. His thumb lingered, tracing the line of Finn's jaw, and Finn's breath caught. "Caleb," Carter warned gently, but there was no real reproach in his tone. "What? I'm just helping," Caleb said innocently, but his eyes were dancing with mischief. He leaned in closer, his breath warm against Finn's ear. "Unless you want me to stop." Finn's heart was racing so fast he felt lightheaded. I mean. Carter's hand came to rest on Finn's shoulder, steadying him. "Don't let him push you. Caleb likes to test boundaries, but only you get to decide where those boundaries are." The care in Carter's voice, the way they both checked in with him constantly, made Finn feel cherished in a way he'd never experienced. "I'm okay," he managed. "More than okay." Caleb's smile softened into something tender. "Good, because we really care about you, Finn, both of us. We want you to always feel safe with us." "I do," Finn said, meaning it completely. Despite the newness, despite the unconventional nature of their relationship, he felt safer with the Hartley twins than he'd ever felt anywhere. It happened on a Saturday night, 3 weeks after their first real conversation about their feelings. They'd driven into town for dinner, the three of them crowded into the front seat of Carter's truck, Finn in the middle, acutely aware of the heat from both bodies pressed against his. The restaurant had been loud and warm, and they'd laughed over shared plates and stories, the ease between them growing with each passing day. On the drive home, with stars scattered across the Montana sky and the radio playing soft country music, Finn felt something shift in the air. Caleb's hand rested on Finn's thigh, casual and warm, while Carter drove with one hand, his other arm stretched along the back of the seat, fingers occasionally brushing Finn's shoulder. Back at the ranch, none of them wanted the night to end. They ended up in the living room, Finn on the couch between them, a movie playing on the TV that none of them were really watching. The proximity, the warmth, the sense of rightness, it all built into something that felt inevitable. Caleb was the first to move, turning toward Finn with an expression that was both nervous and determined. "Can I kiss you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Finn's heart stopped, then started again at double speed. He glanced at Carter, who was watching them both with an intensity that made Finn shiver. Carter gave a small nod, his hand moving to rest on Finn's shoulder, grounding and encouraging. "Yes," Finn breathed, and Caleb closed the distance between them. The kiss was gentle, tentative, Caleb's lips soft and questioning against his. Finn's hand came up to cup Caleb's jaw, deepening the kiss slightly, and he heard Caleb's sharp intake of breath. It was sweet and perfect and everything Finn had imagined, and when they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Finn felt Carter's hand tighten on his shoulder. "My turn?" Carter asked, his deep voice rough with emotion. Finn turned to him, his heart pounding, and found Carter looking at him with such tenderness it made his chest ache. "Please," Finn whispered. Where Caleb's kiss had been playful and sweet, Carter's was deep and consuming. His large hand cupped the back of Finn's neck, holding him in place as his lips claimed Finn's with a confidence that made Finn's toes curl. When they broke apart, Finn was trembling, overwhelmed by sensation and emotion. "Okay," Carter murmured, his forehead resting against Finn's. "More than okay," Finn managed, his voice shaky. "That was your both." "Perfect," Caleb supplied with a grin, pressing a kiss to Finn's temple, "because that's what you are." They spent the rest of the evening like that, trading kisses and gentle touches, learning each other's preferences and boundaries. Nothing went further than kissing and holding, all of them content to savor this new intimacy without rushing toward anything more. When Finn finally headed back to the bunkhouse in the early morning hours, his lips were swollen and his heart was full, and he couldn't remember ever feeling this happy. But happiness, Finn had learned, was always temporary. The complication arrived in the form of Marcus Reed, a livestock broker who'd done business with the Hartleys for years. He showed up unannounced one Tuesday morning, his expensive truck kicking up dust as he pulled into the ranch yard. Finn watched from the barn as the twins greeted him warmly, all handshakes and backslapping, the easy camaraderie of old friends. Marcus was everything Finn wasn't, confident, successful, perfectly at ease in his tailored Western wear. He was also, Finn realized with a sinking feeling, exactly Caleb's type based on stories Caleb had shared. Tall, dark-haired, with a smile that could sell ice to Eskimos. Over the next few days, Marcus made himself at home at the ranch, ostensibly to finalize a deal on some breeding stock. But Finn noticed how his attention kept drifting to Caleb, how he found excuses to touch Caleb's arm, to stand just a little too close. And worse, he noticed how Caleb responded, his laughter coming easier, his smiles brighter when Marcus was around. Finn tried to push down the jealousy that burned in his chest. He had no right to it. He and the twins had agreed they were figuring things out as they went, with no formal commitments or expectations. Caleb was free to be friendly with whoever he wanted, but watching them together, seeing the easy way Marcus fit into the twins' world in a way Finn still sometimes felt he didn't, made all his old insecurities come roaring back. Carter noticed, of course. He found Finn in the stable late one afternoon, angrily mucking out stalls with more force than necessary. "Want to talk about it?" Carter asked, leaning against the stall door. "Nothing to talk about," Finn muttered, not looking up. "Finn," Carter's tone was patient but firm, "I know what you're thinking and you're wrong. You don't know what I'm thinking. You're thinking Marcus is competition, That Caleb might prefer him because he's more established, more sophisticated, more appropriate. Carter stepped into the stall, taking the pitchfork from Finn's hands and setting it aside. You're spiraling into all your old fears about not being good enough. Finn's jaw clenched. Am I wrong? Yes, Carter said simply. He cupped Finn's face in his hands, forcing Finn to meet his eyes. Caleb loves Marcus like a friend, nothing more. He never has and never will see Marcus as anything else. But you, Finn, what you mean to us is something completely different. Something Marcus could never be. How do you know? Finn's voice broke. How do you know this is real and not just some temporary thing? How do you know you won't wake up one day and realize this is too complicated, too strange, and you're better off without me? Carter's expression softened. Because I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. Neither has Caleb. What we have with you isn't complicated. It's the simplest, most natural thing in the world. You belong with us, Finn. You belong to us just like we belong to you. Finn wanted to believe him. God, he wanted to believe him so badly. But the voice in his head, the one that had told him for years he was too different, too broken, too much, wouldn't quiet. I need some air, Finn said, pulling away from Carter's touch. I just need to think. He left before Carter could stop him, knowing he was being unfair, knowing he was letting his fears control him. But he couldn't seem to help it. Every time he thought he'd found solid ground, something came along to remind him how precarious his position was. That evening, Marcus invited the twins into town for dinner, and to Finn's surprise, they asked him to come along. He almost refused, but something in Caleb's pleading eyes made him agree. The dinner was pleasant enough, though Finn felt like a third wheel as Marcus and the twins reminisced about old times, shared histories Finn had no part in. Afterward, they ended up at a local bar, one of the few in the area that was quietly known to be welcoming to everyone regardless of who they loved. The crowd was mixed, ranchers and townies, young and old, all gathered around pool tables and dartboards. Marcus bought a round of drinks and they claimed a corner booth. Finn nursed his beer, watching as Marcus regaled them with stories from his travels, his hand occasionally landing on Caleb's shoulder in a way that made Finn's teeth grind. He told himself he was being ridiculous, that this was innocent, that he needed to get his jealousy under control. But when Marcus suggested they hit the dance floor and Caleb agreed, pulling Marcus toward the small cleared space where a few couples swayed to country music, something in Finn snapped. He stood abruptly, mumbling something about getting some air, and pushed through the crowd toward the exit. Behind him, he heard Carter call his name, but he didn't stop. Outside, the cool night air hit his flushed face, and he leaned against the wall, trying to calm his racing heart. Finn, wait. Carter appeared beside him, concern etched on his features. What's wrong? I can't do this, Finn said, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. I thought I could, but I can't. This whole thing, it's too much. Too complicated. Every time I think I understand what we are, something happens to remind me that I don't fit, that I'm just the stable boy who got in over his head. That's not true, Carter said firmly. You're not just anything, I'm what, Carter? Your boyfriend, Caleb's boyfriend, both, neither. What are we doing here? Because watching Caleb dance with Marcus in there, watching how easily he fits into your world, I realized I have no idea what I am to either of you. Carter grabbed Finn's shoulders, his expression intense. You're everything. You're the person who makes me want to wake up in the morning. You're the reason Caleb smiles like that. You're the missing piece we didn't know we were looking for. That's what you are. Then why? Finn's voice broke. Why does it feel like I'm always on the outside looking in? Like I'm waiting for you both to realize this was a mistake. Before Carter could answer, Caleb burst through the door, slightly out of breath. What happened? Why did you run out? His eyes darted between them, taking in Finn's distressed expression and Carter's worried stance. Finn, talk to us, please. I saw you with Marcus, Finn said quietly, and I realized he makes sense. He fits here, but me. I'm just the temporary hand who you'll both eventually get tired of. Caleb's face went pale. Is that really what you think, that you're temporary, that we'd get tired of you? Aren't I? Finn challenged. This whole thing is insane. Two brothers sharing a relationship with the same person. How is that supposed to work long term? What happens when one of you wants something different, wants someone more normal? We're not brothers sharing you like some possession, Carter said, his voice tight with frustration. We're three people who care about each other, building something together, and nothing about what we feel for you is temporary or casual or likely to fade. Then what was that in there? Finn gestured toward the bar. You two and Marcus, all cozy and familiar, while I sat there like an outsider. That was Caleb being polite to an old friend, Carter said. Nothing more. But I can see why it looked different to you, and I'm sorry we didn't realize how it would make you feel. Caleb stepped closer, his eyes shining with unshed tears. Finn, I love you, I'm in love with you, so is Carter. What we have with you is not some experiment or phase or temporary fling. It's real. It's forever if you'll let it be. The words hit Finn like a physical blow. Love. They loved him. The thing he'd been too afraid to even hope for, they were offering freely. And instead of grabbing it with both hands, he was pushing it away because he was scared. I don't know how to do this, Finn whispered, tears finally spilling down his cheeks. I don't know how to believe this is real. Then let us show you, Caleb said, taking Finn's hand. Every day, for as long as it takes for you to believe it. Carter moved to Finn's other side, his hand warm on the small of Finn's back. We're not going anywhere, Finn. We're in this, all the way. You just have to trust us enough to stay. Finn looked between them, these two men who had somehow become his entire world, and felt something shift inside him. The fear was still there, probably always would be, but beneath it was something stronger, hope, love, the belief that maybe, just maybe, he deserved this happiness. Okay, he said softly. Okay, I'll stay, I'll try. They held him between them, right there on the street outside the bar, not caring who saw, and Finn finally let himself believe that this impossible thing might actually be possible after all. The weeks following that night were a period of healing and rebuilding. Marcus left the ranch, and the twins made a conscious effort to help Finn feel more secure in their relationship. They talked about boundaries and expectations, about fears and insecurities, about what they each needed to feel loved and valued. Caleb started calling Finn his partner in front of the ranch hands, making their relationship undeniably public. Carter surprised Finn by clearing out a space in the main house for Finn's things, making it clear this wasn't temporary housing but a permanent home. Together, they built rituals and routines that included all three of them: morning coffee on the porch, evening walks to check on the herd, lazy Sundays spent in bed talking and laughing, and simply being together. Finn learned to voice his needs instead of swallowing his fears. He learned that when he felt insecure, he could reach for either of them and they would ground him. He learned that love didn't have to look like what he'd seen in movies or read in books. It could be something unique and perfect and entirely theirs. One evening, about 2 months after their confrontation outside the bar, Finn found himself alone with Carter in the barn. They were checking on a mare who was due to foal soon, working in companionable silence. Carter's presence was soothing, his calm competence a constant source of comfort. "Can I ask you something?" Finn said, running his hand along the mare's flank. "Anything," Carter replied. "How did you and Caleb know that you wanted to do this together, that you could share?" Finn paused, searching for the right word. "Share this kind of connection with someone without it damaging your relationship with each other." Carter was quiet for a moment, considering. "We've always been close, closer than most siblings. We've always known what the other was thinking, what they needed. When you arrived, we both felt drawn to you. And instead of that creating competition or jealousy, it felt natural to us that we'd both want to be part of your life. We talked about it, of course. Made sure we were on the same page, but it never felt strange or wrong. It felt like an expansion of what we already had, this deep bond, to include someone else who completed us." "Do you ever worry about it?" Finn asked. "About jealousy or someone feeling left out?" "Sometimes," Carter admitted. "But that's why communication is so important, why we check in with each other constantly. This only works if all three of us are honest about what we're feeling." Finn nodded, absorbing this. I'm still figuring it out, but I'm glad I stayed. I'm glad I didn't run." Carter's hand found his, lacing their fingers together. "So are we. You have no idea how much you mean to us, Finn. How much lighter everything feels with you here." Later that night, curled up between the twins in the big bed they'd started sharing, Finn felt a peace he'd never known. Caleb was plastered against his back, one arm thrown over both Finn and Carter, his breath warm against Finn's neck. Carter faced them, his hand resting on Finn's hip, his presence solid and reassuring. "I love you," Finn whispered into the darkness. "Both of you. I don't say it enough, but I do." "We know," Caleb murmured sleepily, pressing a kiss to Finn's shoulder. "We love you too." Carter's thumb traced circles on Finn's hip. "Always," he added softly. And for the first time in his life, Finn believed he was exactly where he belonged. But believing something and living it were two different things, and Finn quickly learned that their unconventional relationship would face challenges from the outside world. The ranch hands mostly treated Finn the same as before, but there were a few who stopped meeting his eyes, whose friendly banter dried up. In town, Finn noticed the stares when the three of them walked together, the whispers behind hands. The hardest moment came when Finn's estranged father called unexpectedly. Finn hadn't spoken to him in 3 years, not since his father had thrown him out for being gay. Hearing that familiar voice on the phone made Finn's blood run cold. "Your mother told me where you're working," his father said gruffly. "Wanted to check in, see if you'd gotten your head on straight yet." Finn's hand tightened on the phone. "I'm doing fine, happy actually." "That's good. Maybe you could come home for a visit. We could talk about." "I'm in a relationship," Finn interrupted. "With 2 men, we're building a life together, all 3 of us." The silence on the other end was deafening. Then, "You're sick, you need help. This isn't people don't." "People do," Finn said, surprised by the strength in his own voice. "I do, and I've never been happier or more loved. If you can't accept that, then we have nothing to talk about." He hung up before his father could respond, his hands shaking. Caleb appeared at his side moments later, having heard the raised voices. "What happened?" Caleb asked, pulling Finn into his arms. Finn explained, his voice wavering. Caleb held him tighter, and when Carter joined them, having heard from the other room, Finn found himself surrounded by warmth and support. "I'm sorry," Carter said quietly. "That must have been hard." "It was," Finn admitted, "but also liberating. I spent so long caring what he thought, trying to be what he wanted. But I'm done with that. This is what I want, and I'm not going to apologize for it anymore." "That's my boy," Caleb said, pride evident in his voice. He pressed a kiss to Finn's temple. "We've got you always." The incident with his father crystallized something for Finn. He'd spent too long hiding, too long being ashamed of who he was and what he wanted. If he was going to be with the twins, truly be with them, he needed to own it completely. No more hesitation, no more second-guessing. That weekend, when they went into town for supplies, Finn walked between them with his head held high. When Caleb reached for his hand, Finn took it without hesitation. When Carter's arm settled around his shoulders, Finn leaned into it. Let people stare. Let them whisper. He was done caring about the opinions of people who didn't matter. As spring turned to summer, the relationship between the 3 of them deepened in ways Finn hadn't imagined possible. They learned each other's bodies and preferences with patience and care, always checking in, always ensuring everyone felt included and cherished. The physical intimacy was incredible, but what moved Finn most was the emotional connection that grew stronger every day. He learned that Carter liked to be held after intimate moments, his tough exterior melting away to reveal a vulnerability he showed no one else. He learned that Caleb expressed love through touch and words of affirmation, needing constant reassurance that he was wanted and valued. And he learned about himself, that he thrived on being needed, on taking care of them both, on being the bridge between Carter's seriousness and Caleb's playfulness. They had their share of disagreements and rough patches. There were nights when the dynamics felt off, when someone felt neglected or when the balance tipped in ways that left someone feeling left out. But they talked through it, adjusted, learned, and grew stronger for it. One particularly memorable evening, they sat on the porch watching a spectacular sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Caleb had his guitar, playing softly, while Carter worked on repairing a bridle. Finn sat between them, reading a book, perfectly content in the simple domesticity of the moment. "I've been thinking," Caleb said, pausing his playing, "about making this official, more official, I mean." Finn looked up from his book. "What do you mean?" "I mean legal. Partnership papers, wills, power of attorney, all the legal stuff that protects us as a family unit." Caleb's expression was serious. "I know we can't get married, not all three of us, but we can create legal protections that acknowledge we're a family." Carter set down the bridle, his attention fully focused on the conversation. "I've been thinking about that too. We should consult a lawyer, figure out the best way to structure things so we're all protected." Finn's heart swelled with emotion. They were talking about forever, about legal commitments and protections, about building a future that included him as an equal partner. "I want that," Finn said, his voice thick with feeling. "I want all of it. I want this to be permanent and official and real in every way possible." Caleb set aside his guitar and pulled Finn into his lap, kissing him with a tenderness that made Finn's eyes sting with happy tears. Carter moved closer, his hand on the back of Finn's neck, and they stayed like that as the sun dipped below the horizon, three people becoming one family. Summer brought unexpected visitors to the ranch. Finn was in the south pasture when he saw the unfamiliar car pull up to the main house. Something about it made his stomach clench with anxiety. He couldn't see who got out from this distance, but he had a terrible feeling. By the time he made it back to the house, Caleb and Carter were on the porch looking tense. Standing at the base of the stairs was a woman Finn hadn't seen in 3 years, his mother. "Finn," she said, her voice breaking, "I've been looking for you." Finn froze, unsure how to react. His mother had sided with his father when he'd been kicked out, choosing her marriage over her son. Seeing her here, on the property that had become his sanctuary, felt like a violation. "What do you want?" Finn asked, his voice flat. "To talk, to apologize." Tears streamed down her face. "Your father told me about your phone call, about your relationship, and I realized, God, Finn, I realized what I've lost, what I threw away because I was too afraid to stand up to your father." The twins flanked Finn protectively, their presence giving him strength. "You made your choice," Finn said. 3 years ago, you chose him over me." "I know, and I've regretted it every single day since." His mother took a hesitant step forward. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not even asking to be part of your life if you don't want me to be. I just needed you to know that I was wrong, that I'm sorry, and that I'm proud of you for finding happiness, even if it looks different than I expected." Finn felt the armor around his heart crack slightly. He'd imagined this moment countless times, confronting his mother, telling her how much she'd hurt him. But now that it was happening, all he felt was tired. Tired of carrying around the weight of their rejection. "I don't know if I can trust you," Finn said honestly. "You hurt me, badly." "I know," his mother whispered, "and I don't expect to earn back your trust easily or quickly, but I'd like to try, if you'll let me." Finn looked at the twins. Carter gave him a subtle nod. This was Finn's decision to make. Caleb squeezed his hand encouragingly. "We can talk," Finn said finally. "But these are my partners, both of them. If you can't accept that, if you're here to try to change my mind or fix me, then we have nothing to discuss." "I'm not here to change anything," his mother assured him. "I'm here to understand, to learn, to be part of your life again if you'll allow it." They spent the afternoon talking. Finn introduced his mother to the twins properly, watched as she made genuine efforts to understand their relationship. She asked thoughtful questions, listened without judgment, and by the time she left that evening, Finn felt something shift in his chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the beginning of healing. "You okay?" Carter asked later that night as they got ready for bed. "Yeah," Finn said and realized he meant it. "It's strange having her back in my life, but also good, I think." "She seemed sincere," Caleb offered. "But if at any point she makes you uncomfortable or crosses boundaries, she's out. No questions asked." Finn smiled at their protectiveness. I know, thank you, both of you, for standing beside me today. Always, they said in unison, and Finn's heart felt full to bursting. Fall arrived with crisp air and changing leaves, and with it came a celebration. The ranch had its best year in a decade, and the twins decided to throw a party to thank everyone who'd contributed to their success. Finn found himself in charge of coordinating the event, working alongside both twins to transform the property into a venue worthy of the occasion. The night of the party, Finn stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his shirt nervously. Caleb appeared behind him, wrapping his arms around Finn's waist and resting his chin on Finn's shoulder. You look amazing, Caleb murmured, pressing a kiss to Finn's neck. I look nervous, Finn corrected, but he was smiling. That too, Caleb turned Finn around to face him. But this is our night, all three of us. We're not hiding anymore. We're celebrating our success and our relationship, together. Carter entered the room, already dressed, looking devastatingly handsome in dark jeans and a crisp button-down. Ready? He asked, extending his hand to Finn. Finn took it, then reached for Caleb with his other hand. Ready. The party was a success. Neighbors, ranch hands, business associates, they all came to celebrate. And throughout the night, Finn stood proudly between the twins, no longer caring about whispered conversations or sideways glances. This was his family. This was his home, and he wasn't going to hide it. Late in the evening, as the band played and people danced, Carter pulled Finn onto the dance floor. They moved together easily now, comfortable with each other's rhythms. When the song changed and Caleb cut in, Finn went willingly into his arms, feeling the joy radiate through him. Happy? Caleb asked, spinning Finn gently. Deliriously, Finn admitted. I never thought I could have this, any of this. Well, you do, you're stuck with us now, Caleb grinned, no take-backs. As the night wore on and guests began to leave, Finn found himself on the porch with the twins, watching the last stragglers make their way to their cars. The three of them sat close together on the porch swing, Finn in the middle, feeling the warmth of their bodies against his. I've been thinking, Carter said quietly, about our future, about what comes next. Oh, Finn turned to look at him. I think we should expand. The ranch is doing well enough that we could hire more permanent staff, which means we'd have more time for other things. Travel, maybe. Building that workshop Caleb's been dreaming about. Spending more time just being together instead of always working. I like the sound of that, Caleb said, his hand finding Finn's. What do you think? Finn looked between them, these two men who had given him everything he'd ever wanted and things he hadn't known to dream of. I think it sounds perfect. I think whatever we do, as long as we're together, it'll be perfect. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one, planning a future that had once seemed impossible but now felt inevitable. Winter came early that year, blanketing the ranch in pristine white snow. Finn had grown to love the seasonal rhythms of ranch life, the way each season brought its own challenges and rewards, but nothing could have prepared him for what the twins had planned. It was a Saturday morning, clear and cold, when Caleb suggested they ride out to the North Ridge. It was one of Finn's favorite spots on the property, offering a panoramic view of the valley below. They bundled up and saddled 3 horses, riding out into the crisp morning air. At the ridge, they dismounted and stood together, looking out at the snow-covered landscape. The silence was profound, broken only by the horses' soft breathing and the occasional call of a bird. Finn, Carter said, his deep voice carrying a weight that made Finn turn to look at him. We brought you here because this is where Caleb and I used to come as kids. This is where we talk about our dreams, plan our futures, imagine what our lives would be like. And we never imagined anyone else standing here with us, Caleb added, moving to Finn's other side. Until you. Finn's heart began to race as both twins reached into their pockets, pulling out identical small boxes. They opened them simultaneously, revealing 2 simple silver bands, each engraved with 3 interlocking circles. We know we can't marry, Carter said. Not legally, not all 3 of us, but we wanted to make a commitment to you and to each other, A promise that this is forever. Finn, Caleb continued, his voice thick with emotion. Will you be ours, completely? Will you wear this ring as a symbol of the bond between the three of us? Finn couldn't speak past the lump in his throat. Tears streamed down his face, freezing on his cheeks in the cold air. He nodded frantically, unable to form words. Carter slipped one ring onto Finn's left hand, while Caleb took care of the right. Then Finn watched through tear-blurred eyes as they exchanged rings with each other, completing the circle. I love you, Finn finally managed to choke out. Both of you so much. Yes, yes to everything, forever. They came together in a three-way embrace, holding each other tight against the cold and the wind and the vastness of the world around them. In that moment, with matching rings on their fingers and the future stretching out before them like the valley below, Finn felt complete in a way he'd never imagined possible. Epilogue home. 1 year later, Finn stood in the barn, grooming the same mare he'd been working with the day the twins had first confronted him about his feelings. So much had changed in that year. The ranch had expanded, they'd hired 3 new hands, and the business was thriving. His mother visited regularly now, having worked hard to earn back his trust and build a relationship with all 3 of them. But more than the external changes, Finn himself had transformed. The scared, uncertain boy who'd arrived with nothing but a duffel bag and a letter of recommendation was gone. In his place was a man who knew exactly who he was and what he wanted. A man who wore 2 silver rings with pride. A man who had found his home. There you are, Caleb's voice came from the barn entrance. He walked over, wrapping his arms around Finn from behind. Carter's making dinner. He sent me to fetch you. Finn leaned back into the embrace, smiling. Tell him I'll be there in 5 minutes. Tell him yourself, Carter said, appearing in the doorway with a dish towel thrown over his shoulder. And it'll be ready in 10, so you've got time. Finn finished with the mare and walked toward them, his heart full. As he reached them, they each took one of his hands, and together the 3 of them walked toward the house, toward the warmth and light spilling from the windows, toward the life they'd built together. Finn looked down at the rings on his fingers, catching the light, and thought about how far he'd come. From trembling and uncertain to confident and loved. From running away to standing still. From alone to surrounded by family. The stable boy who'd begun to tremble that night so long ago had found something he'd never known he was looking for. 2 cowboys who saw him, truly saw him, and loved every part of what they found. And in loving them back, Finn had finally come home. The end. Red, thank you for reading Red. Did this story touch your heart? Let me know in the comments below. Pushpin subscribe for more emotionally powerful LGBTQ plus love stories. Thumbs up like this video if you felt the emotion. Speech balloon comment. What was your favorite moment?